All right, I'll give everybody one more minute and then we will dive in. I said one more minute. It's been a long minute. I see Wes laughing at me. All right, the 1 minute is up. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here today. We are going to be talking about CTV and really how you can utilize that for performance marketing. I am Molly Grimm. I am our VP of Agency Business Development here at Techent Labs, and I will turn it over to Wes and Matt to introduce themselves.
Yeah, good afternoon for most. Happy end of July as well. My name is Wes Miller. I am the VP of Strategy and Consulting here at Techent Labs. So I oversee our team that handles all self-serve platforms on the operations side, in the weeds, diving into data, reporting, analytics, all the fun stuff. I've been with the agency for 6 years now. I'm super excited to talk about connected TV, more so, as well as the benefits of Mountain. And we do have our partner Matt Collins joining us on the webinar today, and I'll kick it to him for intro there.
Hey, thanks so much, Wes, and thanks, Molly, for having me. I'm Matt Collins. I am the Vice President of Product Marketing for Mountain. In case that's a new name or a new acronym for you, Mountain is a self-service connected TV advertising platform that is built for performance marketers. Now, having said that, it's self-service. I say it's self-service. We have hundreds of agencies like Technet that are using Mountain to drive performance results for their clients. And so very commonly we see brands that are and agencies that are crushing it on search and social and are looking for another channel to unlock and scale to drive performance, but not just performance recognizing it's on television. They're also looking for to build great and distinctive brands. And so I'm excited today to talk about how that works in practice and share some examples of brands, maybe like those that some folks in the audience are tending to, that have been able to break through and really add CTV productively to the mix.
And I think that's a great segue into having the right partner when you are looking for a CTV product, especially when you're looking for it to drive results and intentionally drive conversions in a meaningful way, versus just looking at it from an awareness perspective.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, and it, the beauty I think of this channel and where I think we're still in the early days of really being able to unlock all that it can do is that the consumer experience, and we're all a safe bet that all of us stream nowadays. So at least something. We're streaming some television. And that consumer experience is much like the TV advertising experience that we as a country have had for the last 84 years. The fun fact is the first TV commercial in the United States aired in the summer of 1941 during a New York Giants baseball game. And so that gives us a long time. Like our grandparents, our great grandparents have been watching television advertising, and we're all accustomed to the medium. What we see on that big screen is very familiar. What's happening behind the surface, though, is what, Molly, you're talking about in the way of unlocking all this other stuff that marketers now can do with that TV screen to be able to seek a change in consumer behavior.
Absolutely. Wes, you and your team are hands-on keyboard in the Mountain platform. Do you want to talk about some of those benefits that you've seen operationally?
Yeah, I have a couple kind of bulleted down, and I think the first one mainly for our advertisers is the access to what I would consider more premium inventory. To Matt's point on a traditional TV buy, it's much harder to get, on Fox or NBC. The dollars to get that 30-second spot are much higher than what it would cost in the connected TV environment. And specifically with Mountain, we're able to access, again, this premium CTV inventory beyond kind of those standard channels. We can also expand into like Paramount, Peacock, and other kind of streaming services which again just allows our advertisers to expand that reach and kind of grow their audience and their brand. And then on the operations front, being the data nerd on the call, Mountain just provides a ton of granular insights down to, creative performance as well as that placement level. So is, Fox outperforming NBC? Are we seeing better view rates? Are we seeing better conversion rates? Are we seeing better rates on visits to the website? So all of these levers and kind of things that the ops team on our side can start to pull those levers to optimize campaigns. And then one of my favorite things that Mountain offers is kind of this touch point or like user journey where we can see how did Mountain influence conversion rates for Meta or for Google, and where were those touch points along that user's journey. Just allows us to tell a really strong story in how Mountain is really driving that brand forward and driving both just awareness and conversion, which is not always the easiest to do in a more upper funnel tactic.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to use this slide to kind of tee up the rest of what we're going to be talking about. We'll go through the agenda next, but I don't think I talked about Techit Labs and our philosophy yet. So Techit Labs is a performance-focused agency. Everything that we do is incredibly intentional and is backed by data and research. So we invest in tools like Pathmatics, Claritas, Prism, MRI Simmons, Kantar, Athena, and we really are able to develop your ICP and say, this is who you should be targeting based on our research. This is what your competitors are doing on online media, offline media, and in paid search. And then this is where they're consuming media and in what markets. So really taking all of those data points and looking at them holistically to ensure that we're doing what the title of this webinar is, that we're outsmarting and not outspending. And I think you'll see those themes woven throughout. So this is what we're going to be going through today. We will talk about full funnel connected TV and how Mountain is different from what you're traditionally using as a CTV product. We'll talk about localized strategies. So I know both Mountain and Techit work with, large national companies and sometimes even international. And we'll talk through our philosophy on what a localized strategy looks like. We'll go through some innovative campaigns. We'll talk about the balance between awareness and conversion, and then really dive into the outsmarting and not outspending portion of it. So let's jump into how Mountain is not just CTV for awareness. And Wes, if you want to jump into some of these metrics, I think that would be awesome. You are on mute.
Yep, I just unmuted. Yeah, so I think as we've kind of watched connected TV evolve over the last decade, if not longer, we definitely started to see some really strong ramps in technology. I would say, especially in like the last 4 to 5 years, and we've seen user engagement capabilities also improve. Some examples of this in the bottom left corner of the slide are QR codes being implemented within the ads themselves. They may not drive like the strongest engagement rates, but we are giving that user the opportunity to truly engage with the ad beyond just watching the video itself. And then recently, Roku partnering with Shopify to bring kind of new ad formats and new creative formats to their platform, allowing a user to engage and shop directly, from that CTV ad. And so we do have some metrics here, $300 on average per year spent by a consumer directly discovering a product on a CTV ad, 171% brand lift, and that 60% purchase growth from NBCU's, shoppable activation. So again, just giving that user the opportunity to truly kind of engage in real time with that ad, make that purchase, and driving results, for the advertiser and the client.
And as I start to think about like personal experience, I can recall it's a brand I actually used, so it stood out, but It Cosmetics had interactive ads bringing a new product to market. So really interesting to see how interactive CTV has become. And I think that really does lead into being able to attribute those sales to a spot that's being shown.
Absolutely.
Awesome. I'm just going to tell you that I had to Google how to say Venus at floor to make sure that I didn't completely butcher it. So I think I nailed it. This is a fantastic case study from Mountain where the client was incredibly pleased with the results. So Matt, I will let you kind of go through it, and I'm happy to jump in as needed, but ultimately, like, big picture here, they needed to drive bottom of the funnel conversions, and this was a way for them to have an impact on that.
Yeah, you're exactly right, Molly, and you and you nailed the pronunciation. Very well done. Venus et Fleur. They are a florist, a luxury floral design provider, and I think one of the key wrinkles for context that helps to set up this case study is that they had tried television before, which I will say for Mountain's customer base is unusual. 96% of our customers had never done TV before. So they were the rare 4 out of 100 who had. But they had found that it wasn't delivering the results that they needed. And so they switched over to Mountain to test it out and to see if it could drive the kind of results that they were looking for. They certainly believed that they needed to be in video, which kind of makes sense. I think when you take, especially a luxury item like that, the way that they're doing it, and if all you do is you flatten it out on a 2D creative canvas, I think you really miss the opportunity to make the impact that as a brand they spend so much time refining and perfecting. So, and there are lots of I think lots of brands are like this, that they need the power of video to tell the full story. And certainly this was it. The unlock and what made Mountain work for Venus et Fleur in ways that their previous providers hadn't was our audience building capability. And it's mentioned right here in the title. Mountain Matched is the CTV industry's first keyword-based audience builder. And it addressed a pain point that a lot of first-time advertisers face, which is the first-time TV advertisers face, which is that when they start thinking about the strategic audiences they want to build for television, the existing nomenclature that has been around to service primarily TV buyers and people who are very experienced in the field sometimes doesn't make sense to someone who works in performance marketing and who really has crushed search and social. But it does make sense for them as keywords. So we have a keyword-based audience builder that's it's much easier to understand. It presents to the user a view of how many high intent consumers there are, households there are to reach based on those keywords, which our platform will generate for a customer based on what we can suss out from their website, but also gives the user the opportunity to add keywords or subtract keywords if any of that doesn't match their understanding of the brand. And so the net effect of being able to pull together all these keywords and to be able to see how many high intent households there are, and by high intent we mean audiences that are ready to buy right now, it gives marketers a real sense that they're able to precisely reach in-market customers. And for a brand that doesn't have big budgets and can't therefore afford a lot of wasted impressions, this really is an empowering capability that allows them to test at modest budgets, figure out what's working, and then scale up from there. And as we mentioned on the slide, the power of television was able, and the power of TV advertising, the sight, sound, and motion of TV was able to bring their brand to life in a way that gave them a brand boost and made them feel like they were doing right by the power of this very distinctive brand they built, but at the same time was driving the kind of lower funnel results that they needed, especially during those seasons when we think about when do people give flowers? Valentine's Day and Mother's Day and Easter and other special holidays. So super pleased with the result, and I think an indicator of what's possible if you're a brand that's tried TV but hasn't really figured out how to crack the code.
Yeah, and this is a niche brand in terms of people trying to find that value proposition of, why wouldn't I just buy like fresh florals? Well, these are preserved and they come in like a beautiful lucite display, and they last for, they say up to a year. They last longer. I can fully tell you that. But I think it's just so interesting that by using their voice and showing the product in motion, they were able to resonate with the consumer in a meaningful way and show why they're different.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. And that's again, there are lessons to be learned here for other brands who are maybe thinking, well, I'm special too. I've got something special here, but boy, how do I find really as many of those people who might be right for my brand while avoiding the people who are just never going to buy? And that's been typically the a barrier, not the only one, but a barrier to any form of television advertising is the prospect that you're going to be pouring money into impressions that are just never going to matter.
Yeah, wait, and like the goal here ultimately is to get rid of media spend waste and use every single dollar intentionally. And just to add, if you do not think that your brand has a value proposition or something that sets you apart, we can help you find it. Everybody does.
Everybody's got it. Yep.
So this right here is talking about video being the preferred way that people are getting their information. And I'll start off with the first bullet point here that 91% of consumers want to see more branded video content. And I think right now we're really noticing that video is the methodology to get in front of consumers, whether they're just learning about your brand, whether they're considering what they're going to purchase. So let's say it's shoes. Are they going to purchase this performance model or your performance model? And really, I'll just go into the next point too, because I feel like that's a perfect segue. But viewers remember 95% of the message when they're seeing it in a video versus 10% who resonate with it when reading. And I think if you think about you in your daily life and what you are consuming in video content versus what you're reading, I tend to think of like the last funny video I saw or the last ad that resonated with me. And I recall that much easier than a display ad or a competitor that came up in paid search. So I think that's a really interesting premise on why OTT and CTV are really what makes sense for brands to lean into.
Yeah, and I think I can jump in on some of the other metrics, and I think again these just kind of back our kind of assumptions with kind of where the market is headed. But the middle metric is pretty impactful. We've seen connected TV start to drive more engaged site traffic than some of the paid social tactics, specifically from a research study Mountain ran through in 2024. And that's something we've also seen on the Tech and Lab side, where we've seen Mountain not only perform better from an engagement rate on site, but also a conversion rate. So there is, true tangible value in this kind of branded video performance in that upper funnel medium, where historically, we didn't have kind of that visibility or kind of trackability. I think it just speaks to, again, like the continued technological advances that we're seeing within the specific product. And then I think Matt touched on it. In 1941, first TV commercial aired. We've slowly, obviously, over the years, started to adapt into connected TV, and now 71% of Northern Americans are streaming via smart TVs. That is now the norm. Traditional TV is no longer the majority, and we need to make sure that our advertisers and our brands are getting their awareness in front of the right media.
I'll just point out that the 15 and 30-second TV commercials are arguably the most powerful and effective ad units ever invented. And maybe that was always evident, but it's especially evident in the context of digital and social video and mobile video, which tend to be very easily skipped. They tend to be competing on screens with a lot of other information for our attention. Whereas, again, I think, Wes, to your point, we've had a long time to really understand that TV advertising is a part of the content that we watch, in the sense that we know that there are going to be ad breaks, and that it doesn't take much to go from there to understand that the advertising pays for a lot of the content that we enjoy. And so I think customers just have a fonder relationship with advertising on the television. And then on top of that, I mean, we see view completion rates of like, well into the 90, almost 99% because that's TV and that's the way we've been watching TV for decades. So it's a very powerful ad unit, and it's really exciting to see so many other brands now and agencies being able to get in on the action.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think touching on the last point, I think, there used to be this excitement around like being in primetime news or being in, a nighttime talk show and that being seen as premium content, where now, people are viewing streaming television during those peak hours when they otherwise would have been tuning in to local news programming. So I think having access to all of that in the form of prime content is incredibly meaningful.
Yeah, I think that's right. And maybe a good time just to very quickly jump into a question that's popped in from an anonymous attendee about, and the question is, I've been informed from Paramount Direct that they do not offer their inventory to Mountain and that advertisers are not receiving premium inventory. Uh, I think the question, if I could turn it around, is Paramount inventory, among others, available in the Mountain platform? And the answer is yes. In fact, so much so that and I'm teasing something here, but in the month of August, I'm going to be hosting a Mountain Forum, which is our webinar platform, with execs from Paramount to talk about premium inventory that they serve into the Mountain platform and the unique audience insights into the Paramount viewer and what makes them special, and how does that inventory delivered with brand safety and security to avoid things like ad fraud. So we absolutely do support Paramount and over 150 other premium streaming networks with names like ESPN and Bravo and ABC and Max and the Warner Brothers Discovery family of networks. So it is a premium environment. I think the points you both have made, one of the very exciting things about opening this up to this new generation of TV advertisers is that they get to see their ads right alongside ads run by Geico and Verizon and the big heavyweights of television and that have been around for decades and decades is Techint and Mountain and others for sure are opening up opportunities to access that inventory for so many others.
And it looks like the same anonymous attendee has a question about the high impact creative measurable units that Mountain offers.
Yeah, I think well, I'll attempt to answer the question. I think the way I would answer this is the high impact creative measurable units that I'm talking about are 15 and 30-second commercials. And that's what we offer. And that's what advertisers that's where their campaigns are running across those premium streaming publishers, of which I just mentioned a handful. And so it's 15 to 30-second CTV commercials that air on connected TVs that are in your family room. And that's the ad unit that those are the ad units that we're talking about, and we'll get into measurement perhaps a little bit later.
Yeah, and I think and everyone's definition of high impact is different. I know on the tech inside, when we're placing high impact ads, that's through a completely different system. And those could look like takeovers, interstitials, just kind of something that is going to take over the consumer's entire screen. And video kind of inherently does that when you're running it through CTV.
Right, exactly. When it's on, if it's on the show you're watching at 9 p.m. on your connected TV, that's it. And that, again, one of the many virtues of that ad is that it's not competing with a bunch of other banners. So you've got a take over the entire canvas.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what makes it so impactful. All right, let's jump into precise local targeting. So I'll kick this off, and what I talked about before is that while we're working with brands that do have a larger footprint, we are consistently refining those geographic targets because the messaging matters, and your message to somebody in Amarillo, Texas is going to look probably very different from your message to somebody in San Francisco. And the way that we're informing our strategies so that we can place mountain buys in a more strategic and budget conscious fashion is that, again, we're leading with our research, we're leading with our tools, and Wes's team are hands-on keyboard in the platform, and they are truly subject matter experts when it comes to display and video. And so really kind of honing in on that local feel for messaging, for content, that's going to be typically what would resonate with a consumer. And so Mountain allows us to deliver these local ads without a high entry point and without a additional cost. And I think that speaks really well to what is like travel and tourism, for example. You can target each zip code or each metro with a specific a specific offer or something that might seasonally be happening in one location but not in another. So just so many different use cases for why precise local targeting makes sense for virtually everybody. Anything else that you guys want to add to this?
I would say that some of the details here matter, and you're absolutely right about the opportunity for local advertisers. And we think about traditional linear television advertising of the kind that would come over a broadcast signal or cable. Targeting options tend to diminish the more local you get, because those audiences get smaller. And when you start to try to layer in what Nielsen tells us about the identity of those households, it just does. We don't oftentimes get enough data at that local level through those broadcasts and cable options to be able to really crisply define a marketer's strategic audience at scale. And so some of the options that are now available in connected TV advertising to reach those local audiences include zip code targeting, DMA targeting, or like being able to construct a radius around store locations and then reach households within the radius. And so to your point, Molly, it opens up not only targeting optionality, but also creative optionality. And so if you're say a CPG brand that's getting ready perhaps to test an all new product in select markets before a national rollout, those kinds of capabilities really allow you to hyper serve that particular product and that ad in very select markets and get a read on whether or not the creative is working, the audience definition is working before you go to the CFO with a big ask for a national campaign. So there are lots of ways to cut that local audience. And I think you made a great point about making sure to pair that with just as precise a creative strategy.
Yeah, exactly. And testing geographies is something that we do quite a bit before we actually roll out an entire formalized strategy. Because if let's say you are, I'll use countertops as an example. Let's say you are a countertop distributor and you are distributing your stone to fabricators and they all have a different point of sale system. How are you going to know what the revenue is in return to your advertising? How can you possibly calculate ROAS? If we do test the geography in a precise manner, we're able to see where that lift is happening and can actually attribute that revenue back to Mountain and sort of close the loop. So getting local can have a lot of benefit. And I think that gets into really pinpointing your customer, going back to kind of our philosophy of making sure everything is data backed and intentional. And Wes, I will let you jump in to how CTV is no longer on the fringe.
Yeah, I was almost gonna like poke you on the side saying like go to the next slide because Matt really just hammered this home with all the different functionality that we have in CTV now and specifically within the Mountain platform to get that local granular level to find that unique audience that we're really trying to pinpoint and really allowing, advertisers, which we hear all the time, I'm in search, I'm in social, but I can't scale. I'm running out of, an audience, and I just can't reach these new users. And Mountain gives us that opportunity to find that specific, niche audience that we're trying to find for our advertisers and our clients, to allow them to expand that reach, to bolster that kind of upper funnel audience, to allow retargeting to scale, to allow other kind of platforms to scale, while also driving results in connected TV, which is, just the best combination for clients.
Absolutely. And I know we touched on national brands um, a little bit before, so I won't spend too much time on this slide, but just key takeaways here: being able to test and optimize that regional creative, see what messages are resonating, see who is taking action in a meaningful way. That can inform your market strategy and really help you find smart places to put your ad dollars. Um, Anything else you guys want to add to this? I think we've probably covered um, the totality of it.
I think so. I'll add an emphasis on the third bullet, which, and this is something that I give credit to our customer success teams. And that is the importance of testing and taking a testing approach, testing audiences, testing creative, and the testing of audiences and creative need not be a financial burden. I cut my teeth in marketing a long, long time ago on the brand side, and got a chance to work on some TV campaigns, and I was spoiled on big, fat, six-figure TV production budgets. Uh, Advances in technology and different approaches to ad creative make it possible to get in for far less than that. And when I talk about testing different creative, I don't mean pay for a shoot in Vancouver and pay for a shoot in Australia and pay for a shoot in South Africa with three entirely different concepts and see what works best. Although if that's your jam, then go for it. What I'm talking about is see what happens when you change the end frame. See what happens when you change the offer. See what happens when you change a call to action. See what happens when you switch from a female to a male voiceover. Like, these are the kinds of things that can be done without incurring terrible expense, but can result in a meaningful change in performance. And so, history of TV oftentimes is a sort of this massive effort just to get a single ad on the air, and technology and innovation and advances have made it possible to show up for your first day of your campaign with 4, 5, 6 different creatives that are similar but different enough in key ways to be able to test and get a meaningful result. And so the best advertisers, I think, today, and this is not exclusive of the Mountain platform, but just the best advertisers generally take a test and learn approach before they go and put big bets behind their budgets.
Absolutely. Could not agree more. All right, we are going to jump into direct response because that is a hot topic for many brands and many companies out there. And I think this ties really well into kind of our last point about localization and how we can utilize all of those tests and utilize all of that data that we receive from localized campaigns in a direct response manner, because we are able to drive these direct response outcomes by using Mountain, by really innovating campaign structures and being smart with the way that we're building it out. And we can jump into this slide. Matt, Wes?
Wes, go for it. I'll follow your lead here.
Mute button. Yeah, I think I've kind of spoke to this a few different times now. With CTV becoming more advanced technologically, we can see more tangible results. We're just starting to see the benefits of truly moving upper funnel and allowing our advertisers to continue to expand not only their brand awareness, but their reach, and driving those users down the funnel. And so we have begun to see, again, the big bold letter CTV continues to convert at about 10x better than what we've seen in linear TV, while using about 60% of the budget. I mean, that is the takeaway of the slide. Just amazing results. And we're continuing to see kind of that efficiency as the CTV space has become more technologically advanced.
Right. And it's not magic that's making this possible. Like, this is not because, I mean, though certainly there are advances in the creative form factor, and we've talked about some of the, ads that have become richer and more interactive, shoppable. I mean, there are all kinds of things now that are happening to change the way that we see and consume ads. But this is an efficiency, this is evidence of efficiency that connected TV is able to more precisely find households that have indicated some form of intent. And that enables advertisers to be able to put a much smaller payload into market, buying fewer impressions, knowing that more of those impressions are being delivered to precisely the target that matters with less waste. And as marketers get smarter about that and test and learn, as I mentioned a moment ago, it allows that efficiency to become a force multiplier. It becomes more and more and more efficient. And even though streaming is still in the relatively early days of its audience and growth and number of ad minutes, for example, available in the medium, its efficiency advantage is so apparent. And advertisers that are getting in now, I think, are really being able to take advantage.
Yeah, those are all great points. And I think that leads really well into another mountain case study. These are very cool and very expensive pizza ovens. Wes and I both want one. I think they start at around 2 to 3,000, but they are very cool, and very chic, if I might add. And Matt, you probably know more detail on this that I do, but honestly, it was all about driving conversions. And so typically they were using, I want to say search and social, but really needed to be able to tell the Ghazni story and how these pizza ovens are used, what they look like, showcasing beautiful imagery in order to drive that home. And they really were in need of a sophisticated solution to capitalize on reaching their ICP year round. Because these can be used year round. And I think having that awareness out there was incredibly important as we are seeing more pizza ovens being, utilized and promoted. But being able to reach that target audience with something that stood out and was able to convert.
Yeah, I
Anything
mean,
else you want to add? Oh, sorry, Matt, go ahead.
no, that's all right. Like, when do you not want a slice of pizza? That
Well,
I don't know when that time ever happens for me. Like, yes, pizza at all times of year and any time of day, it's all fair game. But what I was going to say is that you're right about a couple of things. The form factor of this beautiful piece of machinery is stunning. Like, it is a work of art and function together. And I think it'd be the kind of piece, I don't own one myself either, but it'd be the kind of piece that if I did have one, I would want it out for people to see and marvel at,
oh
not
yeah,
not just to be eating slices out of. But the other thing which is important, the slide indicated this, that the target audience is home cooks. Now, if you've ever bought traditional linear TV, you can't go to your agency and say, I want to reach home cooks. That's not, that they're not going to say, oh yeah, let me just open up to our Nielsen audience here and find you home cooks. That's not an option. You're dealing with proxies for that, but not that. And connected TV in particular, Mountain is able to find those audiences, as well as perhaps audiences that might be adjacent to it and that could be very lucrative as well. And so being able to find that niche needle in a haystack audience paired to the sight, sound, and motion of video to show off this beautiful piece of hardware really enables a brand like Ghazni to be able to hit a full funnel effect, to make a wow first impression. Like, I want that on my patio, and I'm ready to take out my credit card and swipe it today.
absolutely. And I want to speak quickly to the results because I want to make sure we have enough time at the end for some Q&A. But I think the big picture here is that the results are trackable. So they are able to see their cost per acquisition against their goal, their ROAS, which was nearly 50% higher on Mountain than their mixed media channels, and then their cost per visit, which in this case, again, was almost 50% to goal. And I believe all of you will get this slide afterward. So this speaks to Mountain just being able to offer complete control over the buying process when it came to the value, to the granularity of the targeting, and ultimately the performance. Going to talk about balance and outcomes. Traditionally, CTV has been an awareness tactic, and I think there is certainly something to be said about focusing on brand marketing to build that connection with the consumer and have your product or brand resonate with them, and then also utilizing Mountain for performance marketing, and essentially making sure that we are driving outcomes with video, whether that's through site visits, conversions, or having an impact on revenue, which is essentially the goal here. But being able to have those two kind of parallels working together, meaning you're introducing your brand to your ICP, and also you are able to then see what that ICP is doing when they are ready to convert, and you have the metrics and the attribution and the real-time analytics to make informed decisions about bidding. And essentially that's what Wes's team does. They're using all of those data points to make informed bid optimization strategies. I will touch on this quickly, and Matt, please jump in, and Wes too. But really, again, we are trying to balance the brand building with measurable outcomes, and that ties in really to direct response as well. So is the consumer familiarized with your brand? And then how can we utilize CTV in order to actually get them to convert because it resonates with them and they have a use for the product? So you don't have to choose one or the other. You can do both. And that's the beauty of working with Techint and working with Mountain.
Yeah, I can jump in. I think we've kind of touched on it already a couple times, but it's potentially one of the hardest things for advertisers to do is to scale their business and making sure that they're continuing to kind of feed that upper funnel audience so they can grow also their lower funnel. And I think that's the main benefit that I see within Mountain is we can get upper funnel and we can expand that audience while still driving lower funnel results. And you can see it kind of in bold in that first bullet. It's not just brand, it's not just performance, it's both. And that's just crucial to allowing our advertisers to feel confident in the investments they're making in these upper funnel kind of tactics and audiences, knowing that we will see that tangible effect downstream as well.
And I want to touch on the last point because this is something that we have been talking about since the end of Q1, in that people who, or I shouldn't say people, brands that continue to advertise in uncertain times have a much higher ROAS. And we have several different examples of this. But really, when you stay front and center in the conversation, you are ultimately going to see returns in the long haul. And so we saw that during COVID-19. We're continuing to see it now with, economic uncertainty, and you just have to stay front and center.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You're exactly right. I mean, we'll have to continue to remind people of that history lesson.
Yep.
Because there will always be CFOs out there, and I don't mean to put a finger on them necessarily, but there will, I'll just say, CFOs who, as soon as they hit a little bit of rough air, they want to immediately shut down all spending. And there's just a lot of evidence to suggest that there are there are downsides, significant downsides to that. You go all the way back to the Great Depression. Post cereal was the king of the hill, queen of
You
the hill.
stole my thunder. I was going to talk about, I think it was Kellogg's, right?
Yeah. And well, I'll let you finish the story, but I mean, that's where I think the
You
history
keep
lesson
going.
began.
You keep going.
Well, so the very shorthand of this is that Great Depression hits, CFOs did what CFOs do, and they started clamping down on spending to keep their powder dry. Kellogg saw an opportunity that coincided with the rise of radio. And so they seized on radio to deliver their message rather than just a heavy reliance on print advertising. Post has never recovered. We're now, nearly 10 decades, a century on from the onset of the Great Depression. And Kellogg's is and has been since then the market share leader. And I defy you to find many other product categories where a single brand maintains its dominance over 100 years. Uh, that's an extraordinary achievement. And it all flipped because of that fateful decision for one brand to hit the accelerator and one brand to hit the brake.
Yep, there is always white space to be owned in some capacity. You just have to find it. All right, we're going to jump into outsmarting, not outspending. So this mountain itself is performance TV, and that delivers the reach of traditional television, but with the granularity of digital advertising, in that we can target your ICP and where they are. And I think all of the data shows what media they're consuming, but also report back on that. And these are really kind of just core beliefs that we have in terms of strategy first, being in a controlled environment, measurable. I would say the measurement piece is so very important to the brands that we work with, in terms of being able to attribute what was once not tangible to report on. And really with linear, you're getting those metrics in terms of viewability, but you aren't able to see what happens afterwards. And then zero waste. I mean, truly being able to have a team that is optimizing in real time and looking at how your creative is performing is going to make sure that there is zero waste in terms of ad spend. And strategy first, I think one of the most important things to think about here is that you are not having to go up against a huge buy-in or huge maximum budgets. Is that there is a ton of flexibility in utilizing this platform.
All true things. You're exactly right. There's a lot of power in it.
There is. And I think this slide really showcases what that power looks like. Traditionally, we've seen a lot of advertisers utilizing social media. So Meta and TikTok particularly are probably two that we see utilized, I would say, probably the most, especially when it comes to Meta. But you can see here that these are all of the takeaways on how Mountain performed compared to Meta and TikTok. So 86% more pages per session with Mountain in comparison to Meta. The same for TikTok, 98% more pages per session. So these are high intent consumers. They are going to a website, and they are not just going to the homepage, they have an appetite for more. And then compared to Meta, 84% more pages per session, and 3.5% higher. And I apologize. The first metrics were for mid-market advertisers, and the second are for enterprise. So both, again, very, very great results when compared to more traditional kind of digital buys. And this slide really goes back to everything that we've been talking about in terms of how we're building out a strategy and placing that on Mountain. That's probably not the correct vernacular to describe what we're doing. But really, the goal here is data-informed decisions. We are doing that research up front to inform us where you need to be and who you need to be in front of. And then you have all of these data-driven approaches within Mountain that I will let Wes touch on.
Yeah, and I think we've probably touched on most of these at this point, but really the takeaway I think for Mountain and Connected TV overall is just the real-time kind of tangible data that we now have in front of us, where we're not waiting weeks or months to get a report on like a traditional TV buy. We can make optimizations in real time. We can use AI-driven targeting on that first bullet to find the precise audience we want to go after to improve efficiencies and ROAS. We can get on premium channels and inventory without having to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars. We have better optimizations because we have, again, that real-time data, so we can make those optimizations faster, more efficiently, again, leaning into automations and AI where possible and machine learning, again, to kind of eliminate that waste and make sure those ad spend dollars are spent as effectively as possible. And then being able to bring all of that data together and visualize it and show our advertisers and clients exactly what's happening with every dollar they spend, and making sure they have a full understanding of both reporting and the attribution being tied to their ad spend.
And I know we didn't show the mountain reporting or Tekken's custom reporting, but I will say the access to data points that you do have is like nothing I have ever seen. It is quite impressive.
I think one of the things you both touched on, by the way, before we get into questions, that
Yeah.
I really appreciate, by the way, because it suggests that you really understand how to leverage and get the most horsepower out of the tools you use. The it is increasingly true that the best way to get outstanding results from a platform like Mountain is to master two things: creative strategy and audience strategy. And if you focus your time and effort on understanding your audience and making it a practice to understand your audience better each day, each month, each year than the previous period, and if you focus on translating that to creative that will really resonate with them and meet them where they are, as we mentioned in a previous slide, whether that means some notion of geography or emotion, you can really see some strong results. And a platform like Mountain then takes those inputs and drives the rest. And I hesitate to use the word drudgery, but a lot of the way that media buying has been done in the past kind of can feel that way, with having to revise a plan and re-revise a plan and then optimize a plan based on results that happen in real time. Our point of view is that machines can do that a lot better. We're transparent about what those changes are and what the optimizations are as they happen. So you can see that in the reporting, how things shift over time. But a brand doesn't need an army of data scientists to be able to be powerful on Mountain with a partner like Tekken. Mastering that creative and audience strategy and having that point of view and bringing those as winning inputs into a platform like Mountain can make all the difference.
Yeah, perfect. And I will open it up for questions. It looks like we have our first one here. Is there a minimum investment to access the Mountain platform? Um, and I think this is a nuanced question because through Tekken, I do not believe that we have a minimum for Mountain. Is that correct, Wes? Or am I going off the rails?
That is correct. We have minimums as an agency, but for Mountain specifically, with our partnership, we do not have a minimum.
Yeah.
And then access to the platform directly, I can let you speak to that, Matt.
Yeah, you know, what we would say is that you're right, by the way, to say that the answer is going to vary a little bit depending on the advertiser. But what I tell advertisers, especially who are new to TV or new to Mountain, is that for about the cost of what it would take for you to test an all new social ad product, if like Meta knocked on your door and said, "Hey, we've got an all new fill in the blank, and we want you to test it," for the cost of testing that, you can test Mountain and get very similar results. And now your cost, the level of your cost may vary depending on how large your audience is, or how small it is, or how regional or national. So those are some of the levers that will move the cost around, but it's very, very comparable. And I would say very commonly we see advertisers that come in spending $15,000 on their first campaign, which for many, many, many brands is very, very, very accessible. Doesn't require going and getting an extra level of permission. And there are brands, local brands, smaller brands that have a smaller footprint that they want to achieve. They're able to get in for a much, much lower than that. So I throw that out now as not as like this is Mountain's minimum, but that is a very common place where a lot of advertisers land for their first campaign, knowing your mileage may vary depending on some of the variables I mentioned.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. All right. If anyone has another question, feel free to drop it in the Q&A chat or raise your hand and I will unmute you. I know someone has to have a question. I'm wondering. We do need Jeopardy music. Yeah, or drop something in the chat. Otherwise, I wonder if I can unmute everybody. My
And
feeling
I also believe we will be sending out
the
this
deck.
webinar recording. So if there are any questions that do come up after the fact, or you don't want to kind of put them in front of the entire group, you're more than welcome to follow up with us individually, and we can answer those questions via email as well.
All right, we have a question from Ryan. What makes your tracking more sophisticated than competitors such as Vibe?
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. It's a great question. So I would say that our approach to measurement is built first on understanding that we're talking about an unclickable screen, the television. And so we have a patent pending measurement framework called verified visits. And the verified visits methodology is designed to be simple and easily controlled by the marketer to meet their understanding of their sales cycle. So you start by, as a marketer, setting your attribution window, that time period where you're willing to give credit for a TV ad for having delivered a particular outcome. Once you've set that and you've got your campaign up and running, the way it works is relatively straightforward. If an ad is served into the household that you targeted in your campaign, if that ad was viewed in its entirety during that campaign, and if a visitor from that household visits your website during the attribution window that you set and you defined, then we count that as a verified visit, which then allows you to be able to, after that, beyond the verified visit, be able to track everything that happens thereafter and be able to know how many of those verified visits got to a shopping cart, how many of them ended up purchasing. So that allows you to build a very well-rounded view of that customer journey. So our approach, we believe, is built from the design, from the ground up, to be able to address a screen that, today we can't anyway go and, slap or tap. And it gives marketers a real sense of confidence about the impact of their ads on consumer behavior.
All right, we have one more minute. Does anyone want to get a quick question in? Really? Y'all are surprising me. Well, if no one has any questions, on behalf of Matt, Wes, and myself, I want to thank all of you for taking time out of your day and being here. And we will send this deck out, but I really hope you're walking away with some valuable insights on how to work with Techent Labs and how we utilize Mountain as our preferred CTV product. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Molly. Thanks, Wes.
There
See
you
you,
go.
everybody.
See ya.